Robin's got us online. If I were a decent Christian person, I would have gotten her the slides way ahead of time, but no, I'm not that person quite yet. We're all good. We're all online. I'd love to start with a few lines from a prayer from the prayer book that occurred to me as I was putting this together. Maybe I need to step back from there, but I need to read them. This is from the General Thanksgiving toward the back of the book, so it's not one that we stumble upon unless you do morning prayer. Sometimes people will use it. It says, "Accept, O Lord, our thanks and praise for all that you have done for us. We thank you for the splendor of the whole creation, for the beauty of this world, for the wonder of life, and for the mystery of love. We thank you for the blessing of family and friends, and for the loving care which surrounds us on every side. We thank you for setting us at tasks which demand our best efforts, and for leading us to accomplishments which satisfy and delight us. We thank you also for those disappointments and failures that lead us to acknowledge our dependence on you alone. Grant us the gift of your Spirit, that we may know Christ and make him known, and through him at all times and in all places may give thanks to you in all things. Amen." There were a couple things in there that caught my attention in a new way. One is that Jesus is going to tell us all to hate our families today in the gospel, and so I thought it'd be nice to have a thank you for the blessing of family and friends, although Catherine will make all things clear in a beautiful sermon, actually, about a really, really difficult text. The second thing on that is that I want to start, before we get to slides of where we're going, to talk about, again, some of the kind of theological underpinnings that I was carrying with me through this time. And I stopped by the Baguette Brothers this week. Just every so often I stop and do a spot heresy check. And so I dropped in, and they were all discussing this hard passage, and part of it clearly seems to be, in that society, the father, the paterfamilia, family, you had no identity outside the family. And Jesus had to get their attention. One reading of that is he's like, if I'm going to break through this thing and tell you, you are not only your father's child, you have your own identity, I'm going to dismantle this thing. So there's some hard language. Well, that conversation was really helpful to me, because I've even told that to people getting married, some of the radical things that Jesus says, and we read in the New Testament, ends up being good for your relationships. Two whole people standing on their own feet, we now know, like, actually make a better relationship, a more healthy relationship than people just kind of becoming a blob absorbed into the family. So I'm rambling a little bit, but the idea about sabbatical, it occurred to me when I was talking to these guys. We were all talking about it. Something in the wisdom of sabbatical, I think, you may not believe this, but some priests think they're indispensable to a congregation. Hard to believe. And sometimes they convince the congregations of that. But just breaking patterns for a time, remembering who we are, separate from one another, and then coming back into a relationship. There's a lot of deep wisdom in that. And it's the first that kind of occurred to me. Some of sabbatical wisdom, I think, is just that, just stepping back, remembering who the two entities were in this relationship, and we'll be stronger for it. So, the other was just thank you for setting us at tasks which demand our best efforts. It's right there in a prayer, and I hope that what I have to say and what I was looking at with regard to craft is weird enough that there's no insinuation that everybody else should like any of this, but that as we're all trying to find these spaces where our communities are built around other forces than rivalry and violence and some of the things that go deep in human history, I hope it opens your mind to think about, I wonder where the places are where I break those habits in my own life. Okay, So that was my Carnal Virtues, Church's Community of Craft. This was the slide that I started with when I told you where we're going to go and do, and that's Kate, our daughter, at work. Now, I know last week, if you were here at church, you probably thought, well, Scott's going to go off and do some woodworking and have sabbatical. He's going to come back and preach, and it'll probably be something like, I don't know, that. And then I came, and it was more like that, right? It was like sacrifice and scapegoating and all of this. What's going on there? So that's partly an apology, but I did want to return to that. Why I was up to what are these ideas that we're exploring? And last time I told you I was going to be spending some time with Rene Girard. Not going to spend a long time here, but I do want to anchor this and his idea that human societies are bound up in rivalries, right? Cain and Abel was a rivalry that went violent, and then they get built upon this violence, and we don't know how to get out of the violence until we scapegoat someone. And that feels pretty good. You and I got out of our violence, but it wasn't so great for the scapegoat. So it's this deep investigation of worrying about how rivalry can infect all of our relationships, even as Christians, even in the church, right? And rivalries become poisonous and violent. And the way of Jesus is a number of ways of how we break out of its grip. And the most important thing he wants to say is that the cross was not one more sacrifice, it was breaking that whole sacrificial system. So that's pretty heavy stuff, but it's pretty important stuff because I think, violence is still rolling through the world, and as a people of Jesus, we're still trying to figure out how we can let different forces hold us together. I wanted to look at communities of craft just because I'm interested in them, but this other book that's just a quote. I'm not even going to read that we've got a lot of ground to carry, to cover. The other person that was important that brought me in conversation with folks making things was Richard Sennett. And here's the introduction, or the first paragraph of The Craftsman. He was a student of Hannah Arendt. Do you know that name? She's a really important philosopher of the 20th century, especially around, the phrase, the banality of evil, came out of her trying to figure out what was going on with the Third Reich. And then finding that ordinary mid-level bureaucrats were carrying out it wasn't movie monsters. So she was grappling with just the banalities. So really important. She was his teacher. And here's what happened. Just after the Cuban Missile Crisis, in the days of 1962, when the world was on the brink of atomic war, I ran into my teacher, Hannah Arendt, on the street. The missile crisis had shaken her, like everyone else, but it had also confirmed her deepest conviction. In the human condition, she'd argued a few years previously that the engineer, or any maker of material things, is not master of his own house. Politics, standing above the physical labor, has to provide the guidance. She'd come to this conviction by the time the Los Alamos Project created the first atomic bombs in 1945. Now, during the missile crisis, Americans too young for the Second World War had also felt real fear. It was freezing cold on the New York street, but Arendt was oblivious. She wanted me to draw the right lesson. People who make things usually don't understand what they are doing. So Sennett takes that very seriously. Oftentimes, we don't know what we're doing. And he was coming into conversation with all kinds of people of craft and skill and realizing there's an embodied knowledge that we are diminishing also in an information age. And he had a whole book then exploring a whole variety of craftspeople and the way that we pass on knowledge and in guilds and how we bring people in and incorporate them into the craft or the skill. This is everything from computer programmers to violin makers. He wasn't just one narrow area. And that caught my attention to think, could this be a model for a non-rivalrous community? Because if you're an apprentice, there may be hierarchies, but it's all to the service of the beautiful thing, and it's a different kind of culture. So there's my nerdy introduction to why I held these two things in tension along the way through our sabbatical. I'm going to try to That's a little plainer shaving on the wall in my shop that says, "Making is thinking." It's another crystallization that Sennett came up with. I think making is thinking. It's a form of thinking. So here, now we're going to launch off onto our adventures. So first we headed out of here with a chair and a dog in our car when all this stuff to head toward Richmond, because there's a reason we had the dog as well. Had a chair to give to our son to finish. And I disconnected for the first time by building them a dining room table on their front porch with borrowed tools. So that was exactly what I needed to kind of set me at a task and head off toward this sabbatical. From Richmond, we headed up to Kingston, where our daughter lives, and my first kind of serendipitous discovery was what a place of craft Kingston is. This is actually just, we were walking down the street, and I see this sign, Sawkill, and as I've said before, I think the only thing good about social media is woodworking. Everything else you should just get off of. If you want to watch somebody cutting dovetails, it kind of works for that. Well, this is a really creative furniture maker, and they just set up their storefront in Kingston, and so wandered around in there, and they've got metalwork, and it's just one of those whimsical, beautiful, inspiring kind of places. So fun to wander in, and then learn how many maker communities there are in Kingston. Rowan Woodwork, I mentioned as I left. This is Suzanne Walton. Suzanne is a queer British woman who runs a really high-end cabinet shop in Kingston, New York. Not a person who tends to be in those spaces. The way I found her is once a month they have something called the Kingston Kez, and this guy is Andrew Hunter, who's a gentle big deal in woodworking, Japanese kind of sensibilities. And they gather all kinds of people and teach them how to make these long shavings with Japanese hand planes. Just geek out. If that doesn't make you happy, then I don't understand you. But it's very communal. It has a task that's physical, and I didn't get to, it was July 4th weekend, so they didn't have it when we were there, so I didn't get to actually do the Kez, but got to know Suzanne, and she started talking about their shop is in an old auto body shop, so it's an industrial part of Kingston. And Kingston's upstate New York. It is not uniform politics. And so she said, the guys across the street on the Harleys are against everything I am. And there are security now. Like over time, a little bit of conversation, humanization going both ways. She saw them working on their bikes. They got a craft. They saw her for more than who she was. And she said, you know what's really interesting? They haven't started coming to the Kez yet, because it's a lot of people, all kinds of people out there that they're not quite comfortable with. But one at a time, they've been coming like at 4 o'clock on Friday before the Kez and having a conversation and wondering what's going on and what it's about. And so it was this lovely illustration in real life of kind of relationships being made across divides where they're just not supposed to happen. But it wasn't happening online. It was happening right here in her neighborhood because of who she is. She's a remarkable, remarkable person. Another project that I also didn't get to participate in the way I hoped, but did get to meet the person who founded it, is Scott Braun, who founded the Decency Project when the Civil War statues were coming down in Richmond. He was teaching at VCU there in Richmond, teaching sculpture, and he's a woodworker, and he thought, I wonder if there's any possible way to get people across these divides, a few of them talking to each other like they're people. And so he built that. That's a shave horse with bicycle wheels on it. A shave horse is a clamp so you can make parts for chairs or spoons. So we got people making spoons. My brother and I had dinner with him one night in Baltimore. He's moved up there. And he said, the question I started getting people to ask was to get them past their, differences that have them at each other's throats right now. It's like, I wonder how human societies form. And then they're carving a spoon and saying what you think about how people come together, and the next thing they know, you've had a conversation with somebody you swore you'd never say a word to. Maybe we'll get him to to Memphis. I think it could be a really cool thing for us to explore doing here, even as we're thinking about the 87 Adams site, what kind of conversations it could foster. It was also interesting that the night we saw him, he was still in this work, even though that day his Korean-born godson was headed to court because out of nowhere, after 25 years of green card in America and working, all of a sudden the mail came with wrong dates, saying he'd missed filing some paperwork which he had, and he was on pins and needles as to whether this 26-year-old who'd been in the States for 25 years was going to be sent home. He's okay. But it was a personal moment for him, and he was still able to talk about, we still got to do this work. Still can't just demonize the people we don't agree with. Then we went to a family wedding, which was lovely. Our niece got married, and we got to see a bunch of people we think are the best people in the world. Then we went to England, where we are, where apparently we're giants. We know we're elderly people, so we were glad to feel welcome. They have special signs for us elderly people. And a mind your head at the top of the doorways for, towering figures like me. We went walking in the Cotswolds, which I recommend if you can. It's what a privilege to be able to do this, but walking is another way that Ardell and I, get in our bodies and get in another headspace, just walking each day. So we had this real privilege. I mean, so you can see the wheat was like ready to be harvested. And those paths, the paths are older than the ownership of the fields. So once they enclosed and started having some private ownership of these in England, they kept the paths because it's older than the idea that anybody would own a field rather than the commons like they used to have the sense to have. So we walked into a place called Broadway, a town called Broadway. More serendipity. Stayed in the Russell Hotel. We had a travel agent who got our hotels and kind of plotted this route. I've never heard of Gordon Russell, but the Gordon Russell Museum is right behind this hotel. And here I am thinking about makers. Ardell wakes up in the middle of the night, and I'm still reading the book on the bedside next to me in the hotel because it's all about this guy's life. It turns out Gordon Russell was a furniture maker in the early 20th century. He went to the First World War. His father had restored a hotel, the Ligon Arms Hotel, in the same town, just down the street. It's one of these wonderful historic places. Father wasn't very wealthy, so he restored it by bringing in craftspeople to kind of restore old furniture, trying to make it look like it was supposed to be. So as a boy, he was watching people restore furniture, learning to revere people of craft. He went off to the First World War, wrote on his, when he went into the war, that he was a furniture designer. He's like 18 years old, and he'd never designed a piece of furniture. Came back with this and started a relationship with the folks from the arts and crafts movement. William Morris was one of those, comes out of the 19th century, really anti-industrial. Machines are dangerous, like really worried about what's going to happen to craftsmanship as the machine rushes in. Well, Gordon said, I think we need to teach the machine manners. He said, because he realized I came back from the war and all of these regular guys I served beside, I really loved these people and realized they're never going to afford a Morris chair. Is there a way to humanize the way that machines are part of our crafts and keep the dignity of craft alive and the dignity of the person? Fascinating story. So in the 20s, you can see maybe if feels a little bit arts and crafts, like these are some beautiful pieces that he'll go on. He can't build anything, by the way. He said he tried, and he's not the person that builds the things. He designs them. In the 30s, during the Depression, they were asked to make radio boxes. The radio's coming online. That kind of saved the business, but it also meant really, really, like to the 10,000ths they now had to measure, and so a whole different process with this craftspeople. And then in the 40s, in the war, there was the real austerity measures, and so they started designing furniture that you could make quickly, that's sturdy for people to afford with the materials at hand. This is actually a chair for Coventry Cathedral that was bombed out in the war, destroyed completely, and Coventry has a new place. So making his way through history, as a designer, one of my favorite quotes of his. Near the end of his life in 1978, he gave a lecture for like the National Royal Society of Arts called Skill. So at this point, it's 1978. He's 85 or so. He says, I've often thought of Eric Gill's another person in that, of Gill saying, the artist is not a particular kind of person. Each person is a particular kind of artist. This is a truth which our world has to relearn. We deprive man of his skill at our peril. That feels very relevant right now as there are different technologies coming in and we're thinking about artificial intelligence. How do we cultivate skill in humans? And teach the machine manners. And teach the machine manners, yeah, absolutely. Lots, I could go on and on about him, but that was a serendipitous thing. I'm enamored of this story. Walked some more. I have 600 or 700 other pictures of Ardell walking in the Cotswolds if anybody wants to see him. It's just really glorious. We even walked into a filming of an episode of Father Brown. See, there he is. We didn't know it. That's the town where what was that town? Do you remember, Ardell? I can't. Yeah, it was pretty great. So, more serendipity. From there, we were headed up to Durham to see the choir and to hear the choir. And got on the train, and I started doing a little research and this is Litchfield Cathedral, which I knew nothing about, and I wasn't going to Litchfield, but it's right off the train stop in Birmingham. Back up. This is my computer desktop for a few years, just the background. Can you see that wood grain? I've been obsessed with this table that they're building, the Finland Black Oak Project, that in 2012 a farmer in Finland is digging in his field and he hits something and it's a 5,000-year-old piece of black oak that's 40 feet long and it's been preserved because 4,000 years ago it fell and sunk into the peat and was preserved because no air could get to it, although it did take on some water. They took 1,900 liters of water out of that when they built a kiln and dried it. So I'm obsessed with this. They decided to build a table. See, the reason I'm photobombing this is that this is Suzanne Walton's Rowan woodworking hat. So I had to get my hat on, get a selfie with the table, and text it back to Suzanne. But the process is just, to me, it's just magnificent. It's a 40-foot table. Craftspeople from all over England participated. They built equipment to honor this tree. I mean, that there's the real reverence toward the tree, the ancientness of it, the beauty of it. They designed this weaving. You can see the joints in there to kind of honor the original shape of the tree, kind of designed a whole joint. So I actually got to go over there and see this piece that in some ways really represents this. If we could break out a rivalry and collaborate toward beauty, look what we can do. Not to mention cathedrals are pretty nice too, but sorry, that's me emphasizing that I was wearing that. Then we went to Durham Cathedral. That's Durham Cathedral. It's actually a Lego. Ardell and some of the youth have been building Lego Notre Dame with Matt Seltzer. So lo and behold, at Durham there was a Lego cathedral right around the corner from the Magna Carta, one of the Magna Carta, which is a powerful time to go visit the Magna Carta if you can get to a copy. They have one of the best copies, although apparently one copyist drank 24 cups of coffee a day and spilled the ink on it, so they wouldn't let him go in the library anymore at some point. So anyway, it's got ink spilled on it, but it's one of the best. Minor detail. But while we were there, it was a real gift to happen upon our choir. I mean, we planned to go, but we weren't there for the whole week. I took Ardell went on to Durham to make sure, but that Friday night she got there in time. I took my detour for the table, did get there in time, and then we spent this weekend, after they'd already been there for a few days, watching them, how much they'd been received, how well they'd been received. They touched people over there. I know y'all have heard these stories, but we were sitting there and would hear the priest stop, and you could tell he wasn't just giving his standard, we're glad to have the folks from Memphis here. He would stop and he would say, I want you to go look at their website. This parish does amazing things. And this choir is, and then on Sunday when they actually let us slip in this piece that Joseph Powell had commissioned for the choir, Steal Away. I don't know how I ever stopped crying. It was just glorious intersection of people who cared about what they're doing, and it was being received in this sacred space with open hearts. And so that's a community of craft. I guess that's what I'm coming down to, is like the choir every day, you find your way in as together. We're doing something challenging. It's calling up the best parts of ourselves. It's not that we found the lowest common denominator. Let's do something simple enough that anybody can do it. There's a way of still calling forth the best of who we are that doesn't have to be rivalrous. Just a different model. So a new place in my heart for the people I already loved in that, especially Christian Lynch, who's, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's rare to have a person with that kind of musical ability. And then, okay, that's all the light we cannot see being washed with my laundry I was inside 100 pages to the end, and we were headed for Brittany, where it all took place, and I threw it in with my laundry. Note that you can't open those commercial law. So it's just like, there's 43 minutes. I'm going to watch this disintegrate. Actually, I took a walk. I couldn't watch it. Ardell sat with it, embedding fibers into every piece of our clothing. But we were in Brussels because we left England, and this was an opportunity to see a special place to Ardell's family. This is many of you know Ardell's the 13th child in her family, which means her father was old enough to serve in World War II. And these are postcards that Henry sent back as a 20-year-old from a little town called Givet, right near the end of the war in 1945. And so we took the channel and went all the way over to Brussels because it's right around Luxembourg, and we could take a day trip down. And we had this fabulous day, like standing in the place where 70 years prior, her late father had been. So what a gift to be able to visit that place and ask the people. It's not a tourist place. It's this tiny little town. So ask the people if they could, do you know where this arch is? Could you tell us where we could see this thing? And so lovely connections. And then that was my office for the next week. This is where the Alfred Rimbaud studio, is someone I've admired from afar. These were the folks I worked with. Interesting stories. This is Alfred. He had posted on his social media that you didn't have to speak French to take his class. And so he's in the middle of nowhere. It's very rural in Sarrant, this little town in Brittany. Brittany is the northwest part of France, and it's pretty rural, a lot of farming and whatnot. And so he studied film in London and then learned woodworking. Now he goes to Japan once a year. He makes tools, speaks languages in like carpentry that I can't comprehend. But a really gentle, interesting soul. And we were right at his house. His two little boys would be building a castle outside, and he was just teaching us his techniques. These two folks, he was an IT guy. He's about 38, and he was working in Switzerland, making lots of money, and he just realized he didn't care what he was about anything he was doing with his life. And he had enough saved up that he just up and started learning carpentry. And he started taking classes, and he wants to do something. He's just like, I just want to do something that means something to me. He wasn't disparaging to everybody in IT. He was just saying, I just want to make things. And so he was still learning. He was just very learning. She was actually a designer in a design firm, lost her job, had a year of unemployment benefits. And as a design person, she said, I want to learn what the makers know. I want to know more about the craft itself. And so she's actually been an apprentice of Alfred's for a time. And it was just a really wonderful place. Every day we'd go in and Ardell would drop me off like the kid at school with his backpack and his lunch, and we'd spend the day learning how to set up a hand plane and how to cut the different joints and whatnot, and we'd sit out at lunch and talk with these people. That's the cabinet. So he has this. The class is all built around making something that has all of the joints that he wants you to learn. It's not that big. Then we wrapped it in our clothing, screwed the plywood box together, and Ardell was calling me Paddington Bear because I had this little checked bag everywhere with orange string around it so that we could checking this box onto the planes and on the trains and all the way. And then eventually I got home and was, mounted in the place of honor near the coffee stuff in our house. But it ends up being this beautiful reminder of the whole summer, of the gift from Calvary, the trust extended to us from Calvary to go off and explore these wild ideas. It's a material thing. Part of this is the way material things play a part in our memories, in how we understand the world. And then I came home, and what did my office look like? But it was filled with Post-it notes all over the windows written by all y'all. And I'd like to go through all of them, but I'm just going to do this one that I really loved. I can't wait for you to have fun in heaven, but you're coming to your home now. That's Ellis. That's Ellis Powell. It says Joseph and Ellis, but I'm pretty sure it was more Ellis than Joseph. You're coming to your home now, and I think that was very much our experience. We weren't pretending to be really glad to be home, back in our routine. You know the old Robert Frost poem about the birches, where the kids are riding the birches up and down, and there's something about going and coming would both be or equally joyous occasions. I can't believe it. I think I made it through, Ardell. I made it. I wasn't sure we'd get through all those. So that's what I did this summer. That's what we did this summer, thanks to Calvary. Thank you. Now we have a little time, actually, where you can ask any questions you want to, and I might or might not answer it. Yeah, Dave. I did finish the book. Oh, the book has the good. Okay, now you're going to give me another story. So when we were going to Brittany, right, we're on the east side of France in Brussels, and we stopped in Paris overnight. Wanted to see Notre Dame. It was really wonderful to see Notre Dame, including the way the craftspeople put it back together and where the trees came from, all the thing. Got a hotel. I texted a few guys that you see drinking coffee on Fridays, and Matt Crow texts back and says, "When are you going to be in Paris?" I'm like, "Yeah, tomorrow." Well, we're there. So we had dinner with Matt and Alice one night in this tiny little place. The downstairs of this hotel, of this restaurant, there were like 3 tables. We had 4 at ours. There were 2 at that one, 3 at this one. So there's like 9 people in this restaurant, right? At the end of the dinner, the people next to us lean over and say, "Did I hear you say you're from Memphis?" They're 3 FedEx pilots that were flying to Memphis the next day. 7 out of 9 people in that restaurant had Memphis connections, and one of them bought a house over close to the coffee shop. Anyway, so while we were there, we went to Shakespeare and Company, the bookstore, and went in and got a copy of the book, because the book I didn't actually own. It was Alden and Hannah's, our sons. So walked into Shakespeare and Company, got a copy of the book, finished it. I didn't mention that Ardell actually got to take a class, a pastry class, right next to the town. If y'all know that, do y'all know that book? All the Light We Cannot See. It's magnificent. So the little town, San Malo, right next to it is Cancale. And so she learned how to make Queen Amans and these other, what are the Fars Breton, Breton desserts. Caramel. So we landed on our feet. No, what'd you say?
Then I read the book too, because I was in the...
Yeah, then Ardell read the book too, because we had this place associated with it. Recommended. Go to the end, read the whole book. What else? Anything spark your curiosity, Christina?
Is there a recording of the choir? Is there a recording of the choir piece that you mentioned? You mentioned.
Oh, I don't know if the Steal Away. Do you remember if they did Sunday morning?
It says no.
No.
Some recordings, but I don't know if they can be made available, possibly.
We have it here, but not from Durham.
Right,
Right?
there's not an official Durham recording, no, but you might talk to Kristen and see if she has one.
But they do have them on, have they just taken them down?
Yes, Durham only leaves their live streams up, I think, like 3 days or something.
Do we know if they're singing it tonight?
Oh, I don't know that. I don't know if they're singing
You
it
gonna go check the bulletin, see what they're singing tonight?
at Evensong.
They'll sing it at some point. They've sung it before.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. It was gorgeous. Yeah.
And it's beauty that definitely comes out of American musical tradition. So I think that was even as much as powerful coming out of the spiritual tradition and special.
I have a question for Ardell.
Okay, question for Ardell.
Hello. I'm just curious you're journeying with someone who's on his sabbatical and his journey of things. I mean, what surprised you, or what did you get out of it, or what did you go into it thinking about for yourself?
Girl, I could give a whole lecture on that.
Hey, October 5th.
Yeah, I've said to some of you that I put a lot of energy into not doing the planning I normally do for myself with travel, or that we do together, because Scott needed to get what he needed professionally. But if I was being invited to come along, I was going to do everything I could to rearrange my work life and come along. So I just was biting my tongue, trying not to make. I'm a planner, and Scott is not so much. And I put all this energy into not planning. Only the pieces that needed to be planned. And it ended up being the most amazing experience for me, practicing life a different way. And a way that I didn't intend to. I was just trying to do right by Scott. But I ended up, when I got home, was like, I have been practicing a different way of being, accidentally. I didn't mean to. And it's been a really lovely gift that's sitting in my body. So, yeah, that's a big question, Michelle.
Believe it or not, we made it home.
The choir is singing "Steal Away" on the 21st.
Oh, nice. On Sunday morning? Come and ask and you shall receive.
Oh, you changed your mind. Okay.
The choir is going to sing "Steal Away" on on Sunday the 21st.
Just keep coming on Sundays. You'll get it.
Yeah.
Scott, can you humanize machinery?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. Actually, Alfred does both. So he has a big shop where he has some machines that help him get the material to a certain place, and then brings the handwork in. It was really interesting this is, again, one niche, one particular conversation with technology. He does things like, if you want to really geek out, he doesn't use sandpaper. His planes are so sharp that they actually peel the wood so finely that sandpaper murkies it, compared to what he would do. So he's really looking at when will it serve the task, the beauty of the object. I haven't solved that one. I think that's humanizing the machine or teaching the machine manners is a question, and I think that we've stopped. Wendell Berry is someone I've drawn on over that, and he would point to the Amish who would say, it's a legitimate question for a community to ask, what will the machine do to the community? And I don't think we can ask that still. Like, it's a legitimate question to say, will this benefit us or not? And we're losing the capacity to even ask the question I worry about. Yeah, Jean.
When you said that earlier about humanizing machine, I thought of the piece I read this morning, I guess from the news, about the newest saint who is canonized by by the Catholic Church who died at 15, but he was a computer savant who wanted to humanize computers. And I thought maybe and I just thinking about that question. I don't know anything more than the question, but that, maybe it's this generation's trying to humanize of a machine. I don't know.
Yeah, well, one of the communities he talks about in the Craftsman were Linux computer I don't know anything about computers, but it's this open source computer programming that's a different model. It's like instead of everything being proprietary, where Apple's not going to tell Microsoft what they do. I wonder what this community could do and what kind of conversation. So he was curious about in that realm. He wasn't just all about precious craftspeople in their shops. All the places where people could find a shared definition of quality that we pursue together, how we hand on knowledge about this. There's no place where that doesn't apply. Liturgy, education, family life, all kinds of places where we could collaborate. He wrote a second book called Together that's just on cooperation. He's a sociologist, and so it's just, again, the narrative of competition as being ever since Darwin, really, as being the defining force has been hard to push back against, and realize that collaboration and cooperation and trust are really necessary. They're great questions. Yeah, Ashley.
This is not a very philosophical question, but it's more of a nerdy woodworking question. I'm just curious, like regionally, what you have available to work with here if you went with like a love for pine or like a specific wood you're comfortable with. And did you have an opportunity, like thinking about this black oak, like did you have an opportunity to work with wood or be exposed to different types of wood you could work with that you hadn't before?
Yeah.
Or presented new challenges or something like along those
That
lines?
little cabinet is chestnut. And if you know anything about the American story, all the chestnut trees in America died to a blight. So we really don't have chestnut trees. So I'd never worked a piece of chestnut. And the little knob was pear. So yeah, it's true. And anytime you work with something different, it's analogous to something but it's never exactly the same. So that was a sweet thing. I mean, I love making things that have stories. These little tables were out of the flooring that we ripped out of the bride's walk when it had to go. So I like wood with a story. So it was fun.
We also spent a lot of time walking the Cotswolds identifying trees. That was really cool.
Yeah.
In a different place.
Yeah, it's true. There's some fabulous trees in the Cotswolds. How are we doing? Yeah, Kate.
We all know you're brilliant, okay? I am totally
Still.
mystified that you can stand up there and remember all of the details you did. Did you rehearse this before you came out here? No. I'm serious. I don't know how you do it.
No, we can all talk longer than anybody wants us to about things that make us happy. That was.
How long did it take you to kind of shake off the rhythm of work, of Memphis?
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. So the second sabbatical, 10 years ago, had one as well. And both times, especially the first time, I am not good sitting still. I need to be better. I sit still in the mornings, try to pray, but for days on end. So it was helpful to go. So, okay, the way we started was we had our last Sunday at Calvary, June, whatever, or second Sunday in June or something like that. We had a wedding, the 8th. Who's counting? Catherine was counting.
The 8th.
Yeah. The service ended at 11:42, I think she said. So we were here the next week because we had a wedding Saturday night, and then we got up and packed the car like the Beverly Hillbillies on Sunday morning and headed for Richmond. But really, that project with Alden and Hannah was really a gift to me, because that is if I can get my hands on some things, and it was extra challenging because I didn't have all the things, and they were happy. We found some cherry, which also meant getting affordable cherry, meant going to somebody in rural Virginia who was quite a political philosopher, it turns out. Because as we're pulling our cherry out, he's explaining the world according to his news sources, to the guys that were working there. And so it's just interesting to go back and forth, just to remember how seldom we can cross into other people's worlds. And that's a second thing, like where are the places we can find ourselves in conversation with people who aren't just in our same echo chambers, you know. So, but building that table was a crazy idea to do on their porch. It really helped kind of disconnect. And
Did you finish all the books?
no. I was just dabbling on them. I finished some of them. I wasn't going to finish all of them. There are lots of books I don't finish.
Like Thursdays?
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Yeah, what?
I'd just like to say, this is the best sermon you've ever preached.
Thanks. It was a real gift. We're really grateful. I don't at all, as I told you before we left, some of you, I was not exhausted. I was not at wit's end. All of the wonderful things that happened here happened because of a bunch of people. Catherine is rightly exhausted now that she's been, but we didn't. Yeah, absolutely. All the people. Yeah.
You were not working by yourself before you left, nor was I working by myself while you were gone.
Yeah. So it was rich and important, and I hope it bears fruit in all of our life together. Yeah.
I have a question. You mentioned that when y'all packed up to leave Memphis that you took your dog. Yeah. What happened to the doggy?
Oh, yeah, I did. So that box with the orange string is bigger than it looked. No. So the reason we did that was we were taking Emmy Lou, it's our daughter's in the Hudson Valley, and she stayed with Kate while we were in Europe. And it was a pretty nice time. They bonded. We were glad that she came home with us because Kate's pretty great. That's right. That's right. Emmy Lou she was quite a star. She had her portrait made. She was quite a star in the neighborhood. All right. Thank you all. Go in peace.